Kia ora tātou. Ngā mihi ki a tātou e hui mai nei tēnei ata, mō tēnei kaupapa tino whakahirahira ki a tātou te iwi Māori. Kia ora, ko Justice Hetaraka tōku ingoa. I am a very, very proud product of Te Tai Tokiro. My whakapapa runs deep into Ngāti Wai and Te Waipounamu ki Wairua. Kia ora. Kia ora. They say it takes a village to raise a child. Nā, koe tēnei, tukimuia tātou. Some of you are already a part of my village, that you guys have helped shape me, and to the rest of you, ngā mihi, because welcome to my village. Kia ora. Kia ora. Why rangatahi Māori don't vote? This is a kaupapa that I've been trusted to have a kōrero with you today. And I also want to mihi kia Julianne and Deb for actually trusting me, a 20-year-old Māori rangatahi, to come up here and have a kōrero about this kaupapa. Yeah, it takes a lot of trust to have some rangatahi up here to talk about governance, etc. Kia ora. Before I go on to have my little kōrero, I just want to acknowledge that my voice is not representative of rangatahi or rangatahi Māori. I want to acknowledge that I actually come from a really privileged position in the sense that my whānau really value education, and they are lucky enough to have been in a position and circumstances where they can pursue education. And I'm also really, really lucky because my whānau are already engaged in the governance systems. So it's normal. I grew up in my whānau it being normal to vote. So I come from a really privileged position, but although I come from this position, I feel that I have a duty to give my mates a voice in an arena like this, so I can see what's going on and why our rangatahi Māori aren't voting. And because of my privileged position, I feel it's my duty to give them a voice here in arenas like this. I also want to note, as a disclaimer, my sight is set on rangatiratanga and self-governance. But I do understand the importance of participating in the system that governs us right now. Because ultimately the system is governing us, and if we don't have a voice in this system, we can't change anything. So why rangatahi Māori don't vote? I recognise that whānau socialisation is our first introduction to the governance system. Like I said, it's normal for me and my whānau to vote. We're already engaged. And a lot of our whānau haven't been engaged in Western governance systems since the establishment of the colonial government. My father's whānau being one of those whānau. And so naturally, as a rangatahi, if our whānau aren't engaged, we won't follow. We won't follow. So I just want to acknowledge that that's really important. The second thing that our whānau face that Minister Mahuta mentioned earlier is that we don't really trust the government. A lot of our whānau don't really trust the government. There's a lack of trust there. Governance, Western governance system equals the Crown, and apparently the Crown doesn't have a very good rep. So we're trying to juggle that whakaaro as well. So if whānau socialisation is our first introduction to the governance system, how do we overcome those blocks? Because some rangatahi that do have those engagement blocks do still vote. And a lot of the time that's because they have educated themselves around it, or they have been educated around our governance system in order to understand why it's important. So I would like to acknowledge that the lack of rangatahi engagement in the system is a systemic issue. It's not necessarily an issue that lies within rangatahi. We don't have kind of an inherent retaliation to the government or local government bodies or anything. We lack an understanding of these governance systems. So already from my privileged position, I had to go to law school to figure out what the government does and why it's important. And I don't think it's very fair to have to go to law school in order to understand the body that governs us. So I hope it makes sense where I'm leading with this. Education is the key. So if our whānau don't necessarily hold that importance of involvement in the system, then we need to educate our tamariki. And I just want to mihi ki a koe mau for your mahi that you're doing in terms of engaging rangatahi from a rangatahi level, from our level, connecting with us, employing rangatahi to work with rangatahi because we understand each other. So currently, at the moment, I have two younger sisters, one's 7, and the other one is, how old are you? 14. She's 14. Currently, they're learning about the government at the moment, 7-year-old and a 14-year-old. The 7-year-old came into the lounge the other night and said, "Oh, it hurts." And we said, What hurts? I have to pay taxes to the government. And I thought, oh my goodness, my 7-year-old sister is learning about the government. They've got like a pretend government set up in their class, and one of the girls looks after the treasures, etc., etc. And that is in the hands of her teacher. That's at the discretion of her teacher, whose daughter is also here. Kia ora. And so at a primary level, all teachers have some sort of discretion, but they're not necessarily practicing it. And so my 14-year-old sister, she's also a year 10 at Whangarei Girls High School, and they learn about civics, they learn about the government, etc. But that stops there. And that's the last place I learned about the government and local government bodies. So what is really, really necessary is that we implement some kind of civics education at a senior high school level. That's where we are starting to vote. That's where we need to know more information to have informed decisions about who we vote for, why we vote, and why it's important. I also want to bring up the point of relevance. A lot of the time, we don't vote because we don't feel like it's relevant to us. Roads, rates, and rubbish, right? Oh yeah, that's going to happen whether we vote or not, right? But the issues that local government bodies deal with heavily affect us. And as rangatahi, when we know issues are affecting us, we want to go out on the streets and talk about it. We want to riot. We want to make change in our communities. So from our perspective, from my perspective, we are not being engaged. No one is telling us that these issues will affect you, and therefore we don't engage in the system. I also want to point out that a big movement is coming. Rangatahi, we have the internet, and I'm not saying everything on the internet is true, but I am saying that we're finding out things for ourselves. We are educating ourselves. There is a movement happening. So if the system doesn't engage with us, we're going to come to you. We're coming, whether you like it or not. So you're either on the waka or you're off the waka. So rangatahi Māori, we don't engage because there are systemic blockages in the way. We have a lack of information in our schools. Sometimes our whānau aren't engaged for various reasons. and therefore a lot of time we do follow our whānau's footsteps. And we don't think that local body governance is relevant to us, but it so is, and it impacts our day-to-day lives. We are a huge demographic, rangatahi, and once we figure out these issues affect us, we're coming. And we want to make change. I also just want to note, I want to leave a wero, he wero tēnei. The society we live in and the bodies that govern us are socially constructed, which means we can change them, which is really exciting. So, pea koutou, it's up to us now to change the systems in order for us to be engaged. Kia ora.